Welcome to our channel, Wake 'em Up Ministry. And today I'll be interviewing uh, one of the guys from one of the videos we posted with David Wood. And it was a conference we went to where David Wood did a statement or a video on atheism and it being logical. So many people were commenting, many people were responding, atheist and Christian, going some dialogue back and forth. And so now I had that interview. I wanted to see if anybody there would interview, and we got a few people who said yes. So this is one of them. This is go ahead and give us your name.
Tisa?
So Tisa is here, and Tisa is here to share his story with us on how he is an atheist. And so, Tisa, how was your upbringing again when you were a child?
It was um average middle class American experience. I went to preschool with through the church, so um the church was pretty formative for me. They taught me, just the basics of sort of universal, um like be nice, whatnot. Um
Mhm.
yeah.
And this is a Baptist church, correct?
Yes, this was a Baptist church. I was not baptized though,
Mm.
so but
And why do you think you weren't baptized,
um,
or what
well,
happened?
I,
Yeah.
I believe Baptist church are like they leave the decision up to you when you grow up, and by the time I was um around the time age where you would get baptized, at that point I was an atheist. So
Okay. Okay. So what made you and you went to Baptist church, and what made you like become an atheist while like what was it that triggered anything or did anything while you were there or
well, it was so I went to youth group meetings and a summer retreat, and at one of the summer retreats I I remember there was this activity with clay where we would form. I don't remember the specifics of the activity, but it was something relating to God, and I was like, I just made a sphere, and that was
Mhm.
it. And I was like, maybe maybe this is God somehow, like just the idea of this. And there was sort of this looseness around what God meant to me at that time.
Mhm.
And I went to my youth minister, um, and suggested that maybe God is just the universe, which is sort of heading towards a redefinition and a reinterpretation of God, and um, sort of lending a bit towards naturalism, like just the universe exists, the universe does its thing. Um, and from there, I just continued to deconstruct my beliefs and ended up where I am now.
Yeah, yeah. And what did the when you said that God is maybe the universe, what did the youth leader say at that point?
Um, well, I don't. He didn't. I'm trying to remember entirely, and memory is
Mhm.
a very fallible thing, and it likes to shift around. Um, Memory is a lot what we tell ourselves, but um, I believe he was welcoming to the idea, but also offered, like, he didn't. I think at the time I was like of the feeling that he didn't quite get what I meant when I said
Mhm.
it. I was like, I don't remember what he said, but I know it was. was amiable. It was like welcoming to
Hmm.
my idea, but I didn't feel like he understood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like he didn't go over like what led you to believe this, or where do you not he was just welcoming to hear you pretty much.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it wasn't a discussion. We were winding down for the night, so I was about to head off to bed.
Yeah, yeah. And about how old do you think you were again?
Um, Honestly, not really certain. Um, Probably in the 14 to 16 range.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then do you have any like evidence or anything uh that holds you to believe that God is the universe possibly? Or at this point you're saying there is no God, right? You shifted there.
Well, um, again, there's this distinction between positive and negative atheism, where it's like, are we asserting that there's no God, or are we just saying we don't know? Which a lot of people um, use the word agnostic for that, but
Yeah.
um, at the time, are you asking me if there was evidence at the time that pushed me that way, or evidence
Yeah, yeah.
now to
Evidence at that
justify?
time that you felt that God is the universe. Did anything you had or read or
No, it was just sort of a loosening of the words we use to describe stuff. Um, so because language is very malleable, um,
what do you mean malleable?
like words change their meanings over time,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we um, adopt new or we with time attach new emotions or connotations to different things that gradually um, come in. So I was just looking at, I suppose at the time, my sense of God was already loose enough to allow for this shift,
Hmm.
but I hadn't really like announced that,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Also, I'm
Sure,
gonna
sure,
close the door real quick. But
sure. And at the Baptist church, do you remember them saying like Genesis 1:1 there at the church, like in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? You remember that back then?
um, I don't remember any particular sermons,
Gotcha.
but I'm pretty confident we would have been taught a bit of Genesis during
Yeah.
like um um Sunday school as like a child. So
Yeah, yeah. And then you said that you had no church hurts or nothing that ever happened to you growing up in the church, correct?
hmm
Yeah. And
yeah,
then yeah. And then you felt very welcomed at the church.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I know there was or I hear there was one of the older men at the church who attended weekly service was an atheist, and he would just I don't know his reasons for attending regularly, but and I also know one of the youth leaders at one point was a Buddhist, I believe. So really just allowing people of all perspectives to participate in whatever form that participation takes.
Mm, okay. So they'll allow the church, it's a Baptist church, would allow different people of different faiths and religions to come together, and
Mhm.
they're accepting to all, right? Is that what you
Yeah.
mean? Okay.
hmm
Is there anybody there at that church that would like say John 3:16, Jesus said, "Whoever believes in me has eternal life," or Jesus says, "Nobody can come to God the Father except by me." Did anybody like say stuff like that there, or not really?
Um, I don't have a strong recollection of the particular
Yeah,
sermons, but
yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't that it wasn't like a Christian church teaching Christianity. Like it was teaching Christianity
Hmm.
as um it wasn't. Yeah, so I'm sure stuff like that came up during sermons, but I don't
Okay,
um think any of it stuck out to me enough for me
gotcha.
to remember.
Gotcha. And then, what was your like while being in church and stuff? So the whole thing about God being the universe, that's where you stood, until, and then when did that change to like no God?
Um, well, that was perhaps a more gradual shift, like
Okay,
um not any particular instance. I still think that's a valid perspective on things that like if you define God to be a coffee cup, then obviously there's a God, but it's like your definition doesn't really um fit at all with what people usually mean when they say God. So
sure.
it's yeah.
Yeah. But for you at this point, it came gradually, but you're at the point now where, for your understanding, there is no God.
Yeah, I don't see any compelling reason to believe that there is a uh deity with a mind.
Hmm.
Certainly not one that is personally invested with our lives. I see no compelling reason to believe that to be the case. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
No, so no evidence, no reason for it. And then,
Mhm.
so for me, when I think about that, I think of like the heavens and like the stars, the sky, the sun when it turns dark, um, the progression of over time, and then how we age, and then the changing of seasons. These things, there's like an order usually to this, and then so it goes, well, if there's a God, I believe there is. Obviously, I'm a Christian, but how did this all start? Where did this happen? And where was God? If He made everything, who made God? These kind of questions, that a lot of us have. And as I look at the Bible and study it and take that question very serious, I look at Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, and it says, "In the beginning, God," and so meaning He existed, and He's the one that is making a decision to make creation. He creates the heavens and the earth, and He's making things, and He does them out of nothing. Now, God is a spirit being, so He doesn't need food and things like that. But His ability to make things out of nothing would show true power. If He's able to do that out of nothing, that would be pretty remarkable, because us as human beings, we need materials to make other things. We need materials that are already made. But God, if there was at one point there was nothing, and He just existed, and He decides to make creation, that would be huge. You know. Any questions you have on any of that I just said on that part?
Um, well, maybe I would ask, well, why are you looking to the Bible in particular?
Uh huh.
Because there's all sorts of different um, perspectives on the beginning of creation,
Hmm.
um, and I don't see like if I mean, there's a whole constellation of different denominations and interpretations of the Bible already.
Hmm.
But even granted that you have, or one has the correct, quote unquote, interpretation of the Bible, why should the Bible be um, the the correct text? And
Yeah.
I know even Genesis, like we have historical records, I believe. Um, I don't have the um, this is sort of second or third hand information, but I believe I've heard that the Genesis stories um, are or appear to be inspired by previous um, stories from um, other cultures with different beliefs. So it's not clear why we should take those stories from these previous cultures, but not the rest of the belief system associated with those cultures.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have to find out what sources said that. But I see it actually in reverse. I think other cultures and societies take the Genesis story and take it as their own. But
Well,
what I would, yeah.
like just from the order of things, like before the Bible, before Judaism was a thing, um, we have evidence of previous cultures with very similar creation stories.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just simply not possible that the later thing could have inspired the earlier things. Like
Hmm.
you could argue maybe that like the earlier I've heard one interpretation that the earlier things or the earlier stories were God trying to um inspire these other cultures, and they were too um heathen
Hmm.
or whatever. But I just think that doesn't
Yeah.
hold much
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
If
So I believe God created Adam and Eve, and I do believe in oral traditions being passed down. That's what ancient people did for a very long time, and then they would start having writing traditions too. But I think the story of creation would have been passed down from Adam down to Moses, and Moses would have had writings, and then it would have just spiraling down for others to have the oral and written tradition of that account. But in short, though, why would the Bible? I want to go back to this question. That's an important one. Why would the Bible account of creation or what the Bible says be the right one in comparison to many religions? I think that's a really great question that I wrestled with and looking into myself. And with that being said, mine's goes. I go again. My information goes around Jesus on this and the historical Jesus. And so historically, Jesus existed. Josephus, Pliny, Tacitus, and I may be butchering his name, historians that testify to that. But also the timeline, we get the BC and AD also for Jesus. And Jesus has a following that is he is respected amongst most major religions. So Islam says he's a prophet of God. Other religions too would say he's a prophet or teacher of God, which is awesome.
Mhm.
That's incredible. So now the next question is, if most major religions are respecting Jesus, now where could we find his teachings? So other religions will say he's a prophet, he's a teacher, he's a miracle worker, but then okay, where do I find his teachings? The only source we're going to find his teachings is actually the Bible. That's where you'll find some of his teachings and what he said and what he did. It's in the
Mhm.
Bible. Now, when you do that, now you come to read the Bible, and you come to know Jesus. And Jesus is a Jewish man. Jesus is known as the Son, and but in that he quotes the Old Testament. And being Jewish, Jewish people hold on to the belief of the Old Testament as historical, and these are things that happen to their people. So he would believe the creation story, and he reinforces that too in the New Testament as well. But that would be why I would take the Bible as the Word of God. It goes around Jesus for me, being a teacher, a prophet of God, speaking on God's behalf, and all his teachings are in the Bible. And then again, he's respected amongst most major religions, where there's no one else like that, like Jesus, that's respected amongst most major religions. So I gather that information, and that helps me to validate the Bible as the Word of God, for an example. But now my thing is, it goes into this question. I'll ask you first, and I'll try to answer it as best I can too. When you went to church, or you yourself now, who is Jesus to you? What Who is Jesus?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. Well, Jesus is a historical figure, yes.
Mhm.
And I would probably agree that most um religions respect Jesus. Um, I'm not entirely sure I follow the leap from respecting Jesus to believing um, in his teachings as the absolute truth. Like um, I think most people would respect Gandhi. Um, there's a lot of broadly respected people in history, um, but that doesn't mean that um, each of their constellation of their views on reality are to be taken as the single truth. Um, I think it makes sense from a naturalistic perspective that Jesus would be respected because he happens to be the um, the sort of center point of the Abrahamic religions in some sense, in that um, I don't believe this is entirely an entirely accurate or sensible perspective of the Abrahamic religions, but I just think of it as Judaism, and then Christianity builds on that, and then Islam builds on that. Um, but I
Mhm.
know that's not entirely. There's loads of subtleties and branches. But um, with Christianity being sort of at the center block of that, I think it makes sense that Jesus as a figure would be um, perhaps the most respected.
No.
Um, but again, I don't think that respect, like from a moral standpoint, we can say, oh, we all agree that Jesus, or we might all agree that Jesus was a good person whose teachings we should follow. Um, and I think maybe we should turn, instead of turning to, okay, why, or what did Jesus say? What did Jesus teach? Instead of turning that questioning outward, we can turn that inward and say, why do we all agree, or why do we generally agree that Jesus um, is a good person? And then we come to see, oh, we as humanity have these moral intuitions that the historical Jesus happened to um, strongly and profoundly resonate with.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's looking at again, some of it is teachings and then the miracles he did. But for me as a Christian, it's like, okay, Gandhi or Jesus, whose word am I going to trust more? Go with, obviously, for me, I'm going to say Jesus. Same thing like Muhammad or somebody else, in the same way that. But now my
But
question is, yeah,
like that's just intuition. That's environmental factors that sort of influence you into leaning the certain way. It's not you have to have faith. You don't logically um, deduce that Jesus is the one above all. You just intuit that
well, well, I gave,
it
well, I
makes
gave a,
sense.
I gave a body of information currently that, again, Gandhi doesn't transfer over to Christianity or Muhammad, okay? But these people of different religions, even Hindus, are going to respect Jesus, and Muslims as a prophet or teacher of God. Um, Islam would not respect Gandhi, that I could remember, and Christianity is not going to respect either one, as their word being authoritative at all. So for me, again, the and then in a society of hospitals and colleges, even to this day, like D1 schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, these are Christian founded, also, and hospitals starting from Christians as well. It seems to be a lot of good has come into the earth through Christians, and this is just a body of information of history that has happened, and these are other reasons why I lean my way towards Jesus as well.
But a lot of the reason that a lot of good has come from Christianity is simply because it's prolific. A lot of good has come from humanity in general. Um, so if um, a large proportion of humanity happens to be Christian, then a large proportion of good will come from Christianity in some sense. But I think that comes from humanity itself, and humanity um, comes with a lot of bad baggage and whatnot. Like
Sure.
the Crusades, I see very like religion. Any good religion, I imagine, should not ever lead rise to bloodshed.
Hmm.
Um, of the nature, it shouldn't. It shouldn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah.
I
Um,
get you.
so I don't. And with this idea of respect, again, it just makes sense that if Christianity is so prolific, then um, a lot of things should point towards um, Jesus. Um, I believe the Bible is like the most printed book or whatever, but I don't
Yeah,
think being the most printed necessarily means that it's the one truth.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. But also,
you
we
can
have the most manuscript copies and fragments of the Bible, more than even secular Roman records. The Bible, the content of the Bible within museums and different places of ancient times, it has the most preserved, the most copies. But going to the Crusades too, my thing with something like that gets brought up to me as well. Yes, I do not agree with that. Especially, it goes down to this: did Jesus or his disciples preach and teach to kill people or to push an agenda on them by hurting them and harming them? And the answer is no. So Jesus doesn't teach it, or his disciples, and they don't do it as well in the New Testament. That's not a way that they do business, so to speak, on behalf of God. But it goes down to now really what is the message of Jesus and who is Jesus? And so, what was your answer? What is your answer to that? Like, who is Jesus?
Um,
You're saying that he's good. He's got good teachings. Anything else that resonated with you, even from
um,
church?
well, hold on, I lost track of the thought. I was thinking that the Crusades, like maybe they're not truly Christian, like no true Scotsmen. They're not truly following the the words of Jesus
Yeah.
um when they go out and commit these. But
Mm,
I think then clearly Christianity um is in some sense a tool that can be used for good or bad. And it's not clear that we should um, naively assume that our interpretation, sort of meandering. Um,
yeah. Yeah, it could be used good or bad, and we got to be
yeah.
careful with our interpretation. I agree, and that's
So
where you need like some validation on interpretation of things. I do agree with that too.
yeah, we can't rely on when we're looking back to Christ. We can't rely on the common interpretation of Christ. We got to rely on our own moral intuitions, and that is where morality generally comes from. Because if you rely on the common interpretation of Christ, then if you happen to be raised in the time of the Crusades, then the common societally held interpretation of Christ would lead you to commit the atrocities of the Crusades. You need to put if you were to be a moral person during the Crusades, then you would need to take a step back from um, the system of Christianity that's currently in place, and you need to take a step back and um, reflect on your moral intuitions and question. Um, and in that sense, it goes back to why do in what ways and what perspectives do I see Christ as a compelling person, historical figure? Um, it goes back to yourself and your understanding
Mhm.
understanding your
Mhm,
situation.
mhm. And I would say you would have okay, by the way, about the Crusades, the Encyclopedia of Wars states 8% of wars are religious wars. 8% in the Encyclopedia of Wars. And I think it's like 3% or something like that of Christian. It's not even the whole thing. Most of it is Islam. But
Mhm.
even still, with the Crusades,
But
taking a
the,
step
that
back.
3% is 3% too many.
No, yeah, yeah, but you're gonna have atheists who kill people.
Yeah,
So you go, not all atheists are good people.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying, or moral people. And I'm gonna
yeah.
say, it is what it is. But in the same sense, yes, there's people who there's people too, by the way, that I hope you know that they call themselves Christians and they're not.
Hmm.
They're Christian because they went to church one day, or they were baptized once, and now they live any way they want. Biblically speaking, that's not really a Christian then, and so with the Crusades at that point, it would have to be people who would know Jesus' teachings and the disciples to be able to decipher and say at that time, hey, this is not what they taught, this is not what they did, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. So those are things that what people would have to rise up in order to be able to not be a part of that at that time. I would say.
But that's the thing. Um again, I'm not a historian of the Crusades,
Yeah.
So, but I would imagine that the largest body of Christians at the time would, um, through examining their understanding of Christ, would, because of these societal pressures, come to the conclusion that, oh, these heathens have it coming. We need to bring about, Jesus may have, preached, peace and whatnot, but he's also preached other things, and we just think that those other things take precedence.
Yeah.
Um, it's all, you can't ever. Um, I come from a background, in computer science, and, uh, studied a lot of, AI, machine learning stuff, and, there's this idea that anytime you are optimizing for something, you're always, risking throwing everything else out the window. You can't ever, optimize for one thing in particular. Um, so these people at the time of the Crusades, they're just focusing on a different, set of principles that, Christ teached, and, they're, not paying as much heed to the peace set of principles. It just sort of evolves with time, and in that sense, there's not, it's, if not impossible, certainly remarkably difficult to ever come to an objectively true understanding of, um, Christ's teachings.
Yeah. Well, again, currently there is no example that Jesus or his disciples did that. So that's the point. There is no, and that would come from somebody being able to read the whole Bible for themselves and study. And I don't know of one example. Another thing too about the Crusades, and again, I'm not saying it was done the right way, but from my understanding, Islam was taking over, killing many people. So this is where the Catholic Church and stuff and other secular places are coming together, saying, "Listen, they're going to wipe us all out unless we do something," and that's where they went out to do that. But again, Jesus never taught it. His disciples never taught to kill others. So that's that. But I really, the next one is, what do you remember? Like, for example, how could somebody be forgiven by God by Jesus? Like that piece. I'm interested to know what you remembered when you were in church, or what do you know Christians believe about that, of being in right standing with God through Jesus? Anything that resonates or that you remember, or
Um, no,
no? And
no,
so
none of that really resonated.
yeah, nothing. Okay, not a problem. And so for me, uh, two things. Even an atheist is going to say
I um
there's
I
yeah.
think your camera's lagging a bit. It like flickered to the logo for 1 second. I think it
Okay.
might be good now.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, oops.
Okay. I think it looks good. But my thing is that Jesus and his disciples, the message was, in order for us to get right and be right with God, we have to live a moral, good life. And I think overall everybody would agree we should do good to each other. We shouldn't harm each other. Many people would agree with this. And the issue is, if we're honest, we also are immoral, or we lied, we said false information, we had stolen, we have taken something not ours, we disrespected our parents. So I'm not saying we do that every single time, but I believe that there's times where we all have broken those, and we've done that. So the Bible calls these sins. And so now, in order to be right with God, we can't have any. And the issue is now, how then is one right with God if we can't do these bad sins at all? And now, by the way, God would have to judge us by what we do wrong. And we see this hardwired, I believe, in ourselves where if somebody stole $10,000 from you, uh, and let's say they got away with it, and you seen that even 5 years later, even though they did it once, and let's say you knew them since you were a child, if they stole $10,000 from you, you would be very bothered and upset, and I would too. Even if they got away for 5 years and we seen them, myself, and I think you would too. I mean, tell me if you think differently. I would say, hey, you took off, you took 10,000. What happened? I would like my money back. We would hold on to make that one bad thing. We would want to make it right, and that's eternally hardwired in us to do that. And now, with that being said, I do believe God instills in us morality, how we should and shouldn't live. We could suppress that also too in the case of the offenses that we take, that harm us. We want to get justice, we want to get what's right. You would want that $10,000 back, and I would too. And now the thing is this: with God, He gives laws and commandments how we should and shouldn't live, and it's 100% good. And He's good, He would have to be the standard to know. Okay, this is good. God would have to be good, and our ability to live it is sometimes faulty, and we can't do it. So sometimes we do fail. Like I said earlier. And now the thing is this: this is why if people pass away according to Jesus Christianity, God would have to judge every deed, every lie, every time we stole, every time. Now, and one place, if it's just for us, that hurts. That's a lot. Now, if there's somebody else who got away with murder, they got away with rape, they got away with something else, that to me, that's a good thing to know that he got away with it, but God's gonna get him one day for what he did that was morally wrong. But if God were to judge us by all of our actions, we would be guilty. You know, if the judge seen us lying and stealing and different things we did, we wouldn't be right with God. And now this is why people do go to hell. This is or hell is like a jail, and unfortunately, that's what happens. And like anybody, somebody says, "Well, I don't like that." Well, Adolf Hitler, responsible for killing millions of Jews, I don't think he's in heaven right now, and so that's the thing. And so now it becomes, how could somebody be right with God? You know, and the way to be right with God, Jesus and his disciples' message is Jesus came, he never sinned, not once, and he never did anything wrong and bad. And on the cross, he takes our bad sin. He takes the bad we've done. And now, when we place his faith, but it's not just faith, that means to trust and have confidence in Jesus that he died for our sins. That right there, that I'll be honest, for 14 years, that's changed my life. I went to church as a kid growing up. I didn't like it. And for me to know, because I used to try to do my best, I was like, man, I could never be 100% perfect or good. I do some good, but sometimes I do bad. And for me, it's revolutionized my mind and heart to know that God loved me so much, he sent Jesus. And Jesus died for my bad sin. He became my sin on the cross so I could have right standing with God the Father. That's changed me in a drastic way, where now I live for Jesus. I do. There's many things I've stopped doing as a result, which has been good for myself, society. Also, too, I help people more than ever before because of this. So I do help homeless, drug dealers, drug users, in multiple ways, giving them food, giving them the message of Jesus, but also challenging them to change and be better themselves. Not to stay the same. So these are things that have happened as a result, and being right with God through Jesus has been crucial in my life. It's given me hope. It's again, most religions are pointing to Jesus as the prophet teacher. That is Jesus' precious message, and I really I hold on to that. It's really has changed me. You got any questions on that?
Are I guess I would say that it sounds like religion as a tool has been remarkably um, helpful for you, um, and in that sense, um, it's been good. But again, as a tool, it can be repurposed for evil. Um,
Mhm.
it really helps you deal with um, these worries about um, moral imperfections, um, how to forgive oneself, um, and that's one of the religion really exists as a way to deal with all these um, difficulties in dealing with the moral landscape.
Mhm.
And um, if if that is the best, most comfortable way to deal with it, um, then so be it. But I
Mhm.
don't. Again, there's. I think there's seemingly too much focus on um, proving, um, like again, just have faith and don't worry about instead of rambling.
But think
But
about it.
I think it's sort of, if God instilled the Christian God instilled these moral intuitions in us, um, which is leading us to um, hold resentment against this childhood friend who stole $10,000 from us. Um, then I would say um, any good God worthy of our worship shouldn't have any issue with whether you believe in him or not. He should just, um, uh, if if I'm sent to hell for not believing in the existence of some deity, but I lived my life to the utmost based upon what this actual real God equips me with, and he still if he still sends me to hell, I think that's detestable and not a God worth worship.
I'm still
Um,
here. My camera overheated, but I'm here.
oh
I'm here.
no.
Yeah, no, I'm
Um,
here.
so in that sense, any God worth worship shouldn't care about your worship. Um, and in that sense, I think it's um, even from this perspective of um, again, sort of rambling and not having a central theme. But
Yeah, but
certainly a lot to cover with everything you said.
yeah, yeah,
It,
yeah.
when addressing this, I don't think, again, it comes back to our own moral intuitions.
Mhm. But the thing is, it's not necessarily just believing in God that's the issue. God's gonna judge. He's got to judge our bad, our wrong, and that's the problem right there. And if he does that, we wouldn't be innocent. We would be guilty, and that's the thing, because he's gonna look at
Um,
every sin, everything
but
we've done.
but if he sends us to hell for that, then I think that's absurd. I think he shouldn't have made a world where um, people sin, and then if they're not
That's
born into the right
impossible.
circumstance.
No,
Hmm?
it's impossible for free will creatures. Then we wouldn't have free will. That's
Wait,
the
wait, I'm
issue.
I'm not. Oh,
Can you
which
hear
is
me?
impossible? Yeah,
No,
yeah, I hear
yeah,
you. I'm
that's
just.
impossible for him to make a world without sin with free will creatures, people,
Yeah,
because we have an ability to choose every time, every decision, and that's the
yes.
problem right there. That We could choose to do right or wrong. That's the
Yes, but
problem.
if I choose to steal $1 as a child, and that
Yeah,
is the only sin on my record, and God sends me to hell for that, I think that is absolutely absurd and detestable.
yeah, yeah. It go.
There's
Uh huh.
um and like if you try to do right, I think that should count for any God worthy of worship should not, again, not care, um like should exercise some reason and see that I don't
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, but the other thing is, let's say in the court of law, somebody goes, somebody did one time stood in the 10 grand, even though they never did that. The judge holds them to what they did wrong and not
Mhm.
everything they did right. And if God forbid,
but
you
but in
know,
that sense, we send them to jail for a suitable
sure,
amount of time, or we fine them. We don't send them
yep,
to eternal suffering.
and that's yes, correct. That's correct. But this is
So,
a parallel or a mirror image of that's one thing that happened though. We're
uh-huh.
talking when God judges us, He would judge every lie, all of our deeds. That's the
Okay.
issue. So
So
these are like separate accounts of stealing 10 grand or whatever else we've done before God. That's huge.
so under your understanding of hell, um do we only spend a certain amount of time there based upon like like is it a court of law, or with God as the judge,
Yeah,
and for
yeah,
each sin, if we don't believe in Jesus, then we
yeah.
don't get excused from these sins. We get a certain sentencing in hell for each of the sins,
No, it's
but
not
then afterwards
excused.
we're done.
No, it's not excused from you don't get excused from sin. And this is why the Jesus part, I hold on for a minute. The first part is God would look at all of our deeds, all of our actions. Just like now, the judicial system, you could have different court cases, or if you've done multiple things that you got caught from, they would put these as different separate charges. What I'm saying is God will do the same, but it'll be condensed of our whole lifestyle. So every time
Mhm.
we've lied, every time we stole, and by the way, if I ask you how many times have you lied or stolen, we can't even keep count of that. We don't even know,
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is He would look at all of this as a righteous judge to look at our lives, the whole thing. And this is why if people are found guilty, which we will be, that people go to hell.
To burn for eternity or whatever,
It'll
because
be like
they
a jail. It will be like a
if
jail,
you
yeah.
lived an average life, you generally were a good person, but you
Yeah,
had a few missteps, like you were a
yeah,
childhood bully or whatever, but you've tried your best to do right moving forward, but you're not exposed to Christianity, or you just don't care much for it.
yeah.
Um, it's absurd that the you should be ever condemned to eternity in hell.
Yeah, yeah, I get you, but there's two things here. One, definitely, there's some kids who, where is that age where they're not innocent anymore? They truly know right from wrong. Each kid is different on that. Okay. So now, even if still you did childhood things, as we grow up, I don't, even if you have a medium life where you never stole or like stole like dollars from $5,000, or maybe you stole something way less, or maybe you never killed, but maybe you lied to somebody. And we all have done common bad, immoral things. We all have.
Mhm.
Even the most best person has did a little white lie, has stolen, has this. Now there's degrees of sentences of punishment. But
Eternal
yeah,
punishment.
there
This
is
is
eternal.
eternal punishment.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
not
but there's
acceptable.
that
That's
there's
unacceptable.
degrees. There's degrees.
I don't.
But I'll give you this though. Now this is I've been explaining a lot for what I believe and why. But for as an atheist, when you pass, do you feel this is it?
When I
Like
pass,
when you
well,
die,
oh,
yeah.
oh, when I
Do you
okay.
feel this is just the life right now, or how do you feel about that? Like, what is your purpose of living? Like, is there an afterlife? If there isn't, is
I don't see um I don't see a compelling reason there should be an afterlife.
uh
Um, but that doesn't mean if anything, I think that should make life right now more meaningful because this is probably something you've heard before and probably have something to say about it. But I think it makes life more meaningful if this is all we got to work with.
hmm
Um,
gotcha. And
and
yeah.
religion is real quick. Religion is one of the most common ways to find comfort in mortality, and it's very effective at that.
hmm and I would say, for like, what would be the point of even living then, or being here? Um, and then even internally, most atheists I know, they're working a job, or career. Um, they, at least the majority that I know, would strive for a moral life. And for me, I believe it's hardwired in us from God, to do these things. It's not just to live chaotic and, just, there's no point in living. Usually, if those things happen, it's because, there's some issues, traumatic issues that happen, or mental health, that somebody wants to just end their life. But a lot of atheists I know, there's a sense of purpose that is they're driving for, and I believe that it's found in God. I found in Jesus, where the atheists will say, well, I don't have the proof and the evidence, for that, but there's less proof and evidence, I believe, than for atheism, then, that there is no God, because you would have to use faith to believe that there isn't, you see, in that
Well, but
regard.
you have to use faith to prove that there is or isn't. It's the I think not knowing is the I think fundamentally the only thing one can know is that one exists. Like the only thing you can know for absolute certain, you can rely on intuition for well, it's absurd that I shouldn't know these other things, and I think that's entirely valid. Um,
hmm
but certainly, you have to rely on intuition or faith to get anywhere practical. Um,
hmm
rewinding, I had yet another comment on something earlier, but I've lost it again.
It's all
Um,
right, but listen,
oh,
man.
oh, I
Go
got it. I got it. What makes us good? Or what makes us effective animals as like evolutionary evolutionarily is like our social cohesion, um and from sense that perspective, it makes total sense that we should have these strong pro-social intuitions to help out our community. And it also makes sense that we should see some of the negative side effects of that, like tribalism. We should be prone to othering people, and we sort of have to overcome those in order to broaden our scope, our understanding of um, who is who is in the in group, which ideally I think should be everyone by default. You know.
Uh, so okay, I gotta go right now, but all right, I'm
Okay,
gonna stop
sorry.
it here. Maybe we could talk again. I
Okay.
appreciate being able to talk to you, and
Hmm.
yeah, I'll send you information once we get everything settled up. I appreciate your
Okay.
time. All right, man. Have a good one. All
You
right.
too. Fingers crossed it worked.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right,
Okay.
bye.